Ethan stood in the living room, staring at the flickering blue glow of his computer screen. His heart raced as the numbers climbed and fell erratically, like a wild roller coaster. He clicked buy with trembling fingers, sealing the deal that would change his life forever. Bitcoin was at its peak, and he was certain he was making the smartest decision of his life. The thrill of potential wealth consumed him. He could almost see the luxurious vacations, the kids' college funds, and the life of freedom that had always felt just out of reach. That evening, over dinner, he hesitated to tell his wife, Lily. She was setting plates on the table while their teenage son, Sam, and younger daughter, Emily, scrolled through their phones. The warm, chaotic rhythm of their family life filled the room. The clinking of utensils, snippets of conversation, and the occasional playful jab between the siblings. Hey, Lil? Ethan began, his voice catching. Can we talk after dinner? Lily glanced up, a line of concern creasing her forehead. That sounds serious. Is everything okay? Yeah. Just something exciting. You'll see. He forced a smile and shoved a forkful of pasta into his mouth to avoid further questions. Later, when the kids were upstairs, Ethan revealed his plan. Wait, Lily said, holding up a hand as though to physically stop the words. You did what? I invested in Bitcoin, Ethan said, leaning forward on the couch. Not just a little either. I used all of the savings, and a loan. It's going to double, triple even. We'll be set for life. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Lily stared at him, her brown eyes wide and unblinking. Ethan, please tell me you're joking. Her voice was low, trembling with the weight of disbelief. It's not a joke. Lil, this is the future. Everyone's saying it. Crypto is the next big thing. You've seen the news. Do you know how many people have made millions already? This is our chance. Our chance? Her tone sharpened like the crack of a whip. Without even asking me? Without thinking about Sam and Emily? About everything we've worked for? I thought about it, he argued, though the words felt flimsy even to him. It's why I had to act fast. Opportunities like this don't wait. Lily sank into the armchair opposite him, burying her face in her hands. Ethan, we have bills to pay, a mortgage, college savings for the kids. And you gambled it all? It's not gambling. Ethan snapped, his voice louder than he intended. He softened, leaning forward with desperation. It's an investment, Lil. A smart one. But Lily didn't look convinced. She sat there shaking her head, her silence more cutting than any words. The next few weeks were unbearable. Lily's trust in Ethan seemed to fray with every passing day. The kids sensed the tension too, though they didn't know the full story. Then came the crash. Ethan was sitting in his office late one night, staring at his laptop in horror. Bitcoin's value was plummeting, the bright green numbers on his portfolio turning red. His investment, their future, was disappearing before his eyes. No, he muttered, refreshing the page. No. By the next morning, he had lost nearly everything. When Lily found out, her composure shattered. She didn't yell this time. She didn't even cry. Instead, she packed a small suitcase in silence, her face pale and set like stone. What are you doing? Ethan asked, panic creeping into his voice. I can't stay here, she said, her voice flat. The kids and we need time. I need time. I don't know how to trust you anymore. Lil, please, Ethan pleaded. I can fix this. I will fix this. But Lily didn't look back as she closed the door behind her. Ethan was left in the house alone, the sound of her car pulling away echoing in his ears. For the first time, he realized that he hadn't just gambled their money. He had gambled his family's future, and he had lost. The house was suffocatingly quiet after Lily and the kids left. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills that had been piling up. The weight of his decisions bore down on him like a physical force, squeezing the air from his lungs. His bank account was nearly empty, and the loan payments loomed like a dark cloud. He needed to act quickly. The days of cushy office work were gone. He was too distracted to hold down a job, and no one was hiring someone in his condition. So Ethan took whatever work he could find. He started waking up at dawn, slipping on an old jacket and heading to the construction sites across town. They rarely offered steady work, but if a foreman needed an extra set of hands, Ethan was there. He hauled bricks, dug trenches, and swept debris for hours, earning just enough cash to buy groceries and make a dent, no matter how small, in the mounting debt. On other days, Ethan picked up shifts as a delivery driver. His old sedan, battered but still functional, became his lifeline. He spent endless hours driving through congested streets, dropping off meals to strangers. Some nights, he'd sit in the car with an untouched delivery of fast food, tempted to eat it himself before reluctantly handing it over. The physical exhaustion was relentless, but the mental toll was worse. Every time he returned to the empty house, he was met with reminders of his family. Sam's forgotten basketball jersey in the laundry room. Emily's sketches pinned to the fridge. Lily's favorite blanket still folded on the couch. Meals became simple and repetitive. Canned soup, day-old bread, and the occasional egg if he could afford it. He rationed every dollar, forcing himself to ignore the gnawing hunger when his stomach growled late at night. Yet, amidst the despair, there were moments of clarity. One evening, after another long day of deliveries, Ethan collapsed onto the couch and stared at his laptop. The crypto portfolio that had started this disaster was still there, a cruel reminder of his failure. But instead of closing it in shame, he opened it. "Time to figure this out," he muttered, determination flickering like a dying ember. He began spending his nights immersed in research, reading articles about market trends, blockchain technology, and investment strategies. The screen's glow burned into his tired eyes, but he pressed on. This wasn't about getting rich anymore. It was about survival. Ethan knew he was at rock bottom, but he also knew there was only one way to go. Up. Ethan's days were still grueling, but the nights began to feel different. As he continued his research and made cautious investments in smaller, lesser-known cryptocurrencies, his portfolio started to show signs of life. At first, it was just a few dollars here and there, the kind of growth that could barely buy a meal. But over time, something changed. One evening, Ethan logged into his account after a particularly exhausting day. His eyelids were heavy, and his body ached from hauling debris at the construction site, but the numbers on the screen jolted him awake. A small cryptocurrency he had invested in, a token tied to an innovative green energy project, had jumped in value. His initial $200 investment was now worth $800. "Holy," Ethan whispered, leaning closer to the screen as if proximity would make the numbers more real. It wasn't life-changing, but it was enough to make a payment on the loan and still leave him with a little breathing room. For the first time in months, Ethan felt the slightest flicker of hope. Encouraged, he carefully reinvested some of his earnings into other emerging projects, taking calculated risks instead of blind leaps. He stuck to what he understood, avoiding the flashy, hyped-up coins that had tempted him before. The market was volatile, but Ethan stayed patient. Every small win, a $50 gain here, a $100 surge there, felt like a victory. He started paying off his debts in increments, watching the balance shrink bit by bit. The debt collectors called less frequently, their tone softening as he proved he was serious about repayment. With each payment, Ethan felt a weight lifting. He still worked long hours at the sites and drove deliveries late into the night. But now, his days were fueled by purpose rather than desperation. Months passed, and his portfolio continued to grow. By now, the once empty fridge held fresh produce and meat. The heating stayed on through the bitter winter nights. Ethan even began fixing up the house, tightening leaky faucets, repainting the walls, and patching the roof. One evening, as he sat down with a simple dinner of chicken and rice, Ethan allowed himself a rare moment of pride. He logged into his portfolio to see that his investments had doubled yet again. Bitcoin had begun to recover, and his other holdings were following suit. He remembered the night Lily left, the look of disappointment and betrayal in her eyes. He remembered Sam and Emily barely acknowledging him in their text messages. And he remembered the crushing silence of the house that had once been filled with laughter and warmth. "I'll make it right," he murmured to himself, clenching his fists. "I'll fix everything." The turning point came when Bitcoin surged dramatically. Ethan's early investments had compounded, and his portfolio finally crossed a major milestone: 6 figures. For the first time in years, he saw a future that wasn't buried in debt or regret. Ethan didn't splurge or celebrate extravagantly. Instead, he withdrew a portion of his earnings and paid off the remainder of the loan in one decisive payment. The relief was overwhelming, but he wasn't done. With his newfound financial stability, Ethan started thinking about his family. He set up college savings accounts for Sam and Emily, ensuring their futures were secure. He also drafted a plan to show Lily how he had turned things around, not just financially, but as a person. Ethan's life was far from perfect, but it was improving, slowly, steadily, and undeniably. The man who had once gambled everything was now rebuilding, one step at a time. With his debts fully paid and a growing portfolio of investments, Ethan began to shift his focus from survival to rebuilding. He knew that fixing his financial mistakes wasn't enough. He needed to prove to Lily and the kids that he had truly changed. The first thing he did was open college savings accounts for Sam and Emily. He visited the bank in person, speaking with an advisor to ensure the accounts were secure and structured to grow over time. He deposited enough money to cover their future education expenses and left the bank with a small smile on his face. "This is for them," he murmured to himself, tucking the account details into a folder. Next, Ethan started looking for a new place to live. The old house, though filled with memories, had also become a symbol of his failures. He wanted a fresh start, not just for himself, but for the family he hoped to reunite. After weeks of searching, he found the perfect home, a modest but beautiful 3-bedroom house with a backyard big enough for Sam and Emily to play in. It wasn't extravagant, but it was warm and inviting, with plenty of natural light and a cozy fireplace in the living room. Ethan worked with a realtor to secure the purchase, paying for the home outright with his crypto earnings. As he stood in the empty living room on the day of the closing, he imagined the space filled with the sounds of laughter and footsteps. "This isn't just a house," he thought. "This is a promise, to them and to myself." With the house settled, Ethan turned his attention to Lily. He knew that getting her back wouldn't be as simple as showing her the accounts or the house. She needed to see that he had grown not just as a provider but as a person. Ethan started by writing her a letter. "Dear Lily," he began, the words slow and deliberate. "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect forgiveness overnight. But I want you to know that I've spent every day since you left working to become the man you and the kids deserve. Not just financially, but emotionally. I've learned the hard way that trust is fragile, and I'll do everything I can to rebuild it." He poured his heart onto the page, detailing the steps he had taken to pay off the debt, secure the kids' futures, and build a stable life. He included the account information for Sam and Emily, along with photos of the new house. Finally, he wrote, "I'm not asking for everything to go back to the way it was. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I've changed, one step at a time. I'll wait as long as it takes." Ethan folded the letter carefully, sealing it in an envelope. Instead of mailing it, he decided to deliver it in person. On a cool Saturday afternoon, Ethan stood outside Lily's sister's house, the letter clutched in his hand. His palms were sweaty, and his heart raced as he rang the doorbell. Lily opened the door, her expression wary. She hadn't seen Ethan in months, and the sight of him standing there took her by surprise. "Ethan," she said cautiously, "what are you doing here?" "I needed to see you," he said, his voice steady despite the nervousness bubbling inside him. "I've been working hard, and I want to show you something." He handed her the letter. For a moment, Lily hesitated, then took it and stepped back inside. "Give me some time to read this," she said quietly, closing the door. Ethan nodded, turning to leave. As he walked back to his car, he felt a mix of hope and anxiety. He didn't know how Lily would respond, but he was prepared to wait. Over the next few days, Ethan kept his phone close, jumping at every buzz and ring. Finally, a text came through from Lily. "We need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow?" Ethan stared at the screen, his chest tightening. It wasn't a definitive answer, but it was a step. Ethan arrived at Lily's sister's house the next day, his stomach in knots. He parked the car and sat for a moment, gathering his thoughts. He had rehearsed a dozen different versions of what he might say, but now, standing on the doorstep, his mind was blank. When Lily opened the door, she looked calm but guarded. "Come in," she said, stepping aside to let him through. The living room was tidy, the soft hum of a television playing in the background. Lily gestured for him to sit on the couch while she took the armchair across from him. "Thanks for coming," Ethan began, his voice quieter than he intended. "You're the one who wanted to talk," Lily said, her tone neutral. "I read your letter. It was a lot to take in." Ethan nodded. "I can imagine. I just wanted you to know that I've been trying, really trying, to fix everything." Lily sighed and leaned back in her chair. "The accounts for Sam and Emily, the house. It's all very generous. But, Ethan, I need to understand why. Why now? What made you change after everything that happened?" Ethan took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "When you left, it was like everything finally hit me all at once. Not just the money or the mistakes. I realized how much I had taken you and the kids for granted. I wasn't just losing you. I was losing the life we'd built together. That terrified me. I didn't know how to fix things at first," he continued. "So I started with what I could control, the debts, the money. But the more I worked on that, the more I realized that it wasn't about the finances. It was about proving to you, to myself, that I could be someone you could rely on again. Someone who listens, who puts his family first." Lily's expression softened, but her eyes remained cautious. "I appreciate that, Ethan. Really, I do. But trust doesn't come back overnight. You broke something in us when you made those decisions without me. It wasn't just the money. It was the fact that you didn't think we mattered enough to be part of the decision." "I know," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I failed you in more ways than I can count. That's why I'm not here asking for forgiveness or expecting everything to go back to the way it was. I'm asking for a chance to earn it back, step by step." Lily looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring absent-mindedly. "Sam and Emily, they're still angry with you. Sam especially. He feels like you put their futures at risk." Ethan swallowed hard. "I know. I've been thinking about how to make it right with them too. I'd like to sit down with both of them and tell them everything. No excuses, no sugarcoating. They deserve to know what happened and why I'm doing everything I can to fix it." Lily looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "You've really thought about this, haven't you?" He nodded. "Every day. It's all I think about." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Lily sighed, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Ethan, I'm not saying we can just pick up where we left off. It's going to take time. For me, for the kids. But maybe we can start small. Go slow." Ethan's chest tightened, a wave of relief washing over him. "That's all I'm asking for, Lily. A chance to prove myself." She stood up and walked over to the kitchen counter, grabbing her phone. "The kids are at the park with my sister right now. When they get back, we'll sit down and talk, together." Ethan rose to his feet, his voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you, Lily. I won't let you down." She gave him a small, tentative smile. "We'll see." As Ethan left the house that day, he felt the weight of possibility on his shoulders. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a beginning, a fragile thread of hope he vowed to protect with everything he had. The following weeks were some of the hardest of Ethan's life, but also the most rewarding. True to her word, Lily allowed him to take small steps back into their lives. It wasn't easy. Sam and Emily were distant at first, their resentment palpable. At their first family meeting, Sam crossed his arms and refused to look Ethan in the eye. "Why should we trust you again?" he demanded. "You nearly ruined everything." Ethan took a deep breath, steadying himself. "You're right, Sam," he said, his voice even. "I did. And I'm not here to tell you to forgive me. I just want the chance to show you that I've learned from my mistakes, that I'm doing everything I can to make things better, for all of us." Emily, quieter but no less hurt, hesitated before speaking. "Is that why you set up the college accounts?" she asked softly. "Yes," Ethan said. "I want you both to know that no matter what happens, your futures are secure. That's the least I can do after what I've put you through." There were no hugs or tearful reconciliations that day, but Ethan noticed a small shift in their demeanor. The anger wasn't gone, but it had softened slightly into curiosity, an openness to see if he could back up his words with actions. Ethan began spending more time with Sam and Emily, finding ways to connect with them on their terms. He helped Sam practice for basketball tryouts, rebounding shot after shot in the driveway until his arms ached. With Emily, he dusted off an old sketchbook and joined her in drawing at the kitchen table, marveling at her creativity. Each small moment was a step toward healing. Lily, too, started to let her guard down. She joined Ethan on evening walks, where they talked about the kids, their plans for the future, and even shared a few laughs. Ethan noticed the way her eyes softened when he spoke about his progress, and it gave him hope. The turning point came one Saturday morning. Ethan had invited the family to see the new house he had bought, hoping it could be a symbol of their fresh start. As they walked through the house, Sam and Emily explored the rooms, their initial skepticism giving way to cautious excitement. "This could be my room," Emily said, peeking into a cozy space with a large window. "And there's room for a basketball hoop in the backyard," Sam added, his tone begrudgingly impressed. Ethan watched them, his heart swelling. He turned to Lily, who was standing in the kitchen, running her fingers over the marble countertop. "What do you think?" he asked nervously. Lily looked around, then met his gaze. "It's a good house," she said. "It feels right." Later that day, as they sat on the back porch, Ethan handed Lily a set of keys. "This is your home too," he said, "if you're ready. If not, I'll wait as long as it takes." Lily stared at the keys for a long moment, then took them, her fingers brushing against his. "You've come a long way, Ethan. I think we're ready to give this another shot." Ethan couldn't hold back the tears that welled up in his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt whole again. In the months that followed, the family began to rebuild their lives together. The new house filled with laughter, arguments, and love, everything that made it a home. Sam made the basketball team. Emily started sharing her artwork online, and Ethan and Lily worked together to strengthen their marriage. Ethan never forgot the lessons he'd learned. He continued to grow his investments cautiously and used his success to help others, launching a financial literacy program in the community. Most importantly, he never took his family for granted again. He knew the road to redemption was long, but every step was worth it to have the people he loved by his side.